Daren, I'm going to host your podcast for you, for your company. What are you going to do for me?
Nothing.
Welcome to It's All Money. Your hosts are right here in front of you. You're checking out It's All Money. This episode's on gratitude. Welcome inside the Sonoma Wealth Conference Room off the Sonoma Square. This is It's All Money, powered by Sonoma Wealth Advisors. I'm Dano, your host, and joined by Daren Blonsky, CFP, AIF, and the rest of his alphabet soup of letters. And today, in the spirit of Thanksgiving and the holiday season, we wanted to do an episode on gratitude and being thankful. Why gratitude matters and why it can, in some cases, affect your life, your business, your health. And Daren, I know this is a particularly important issue for you because it's a core value of our company and it's something that you practice every day.
Try to.
I found some actual data rather than just sitting around and talking about how great it is to be mindful and be thankful. There's a great write-up on mindful.org. The author is Misty Pratt. Nice work, Misty, which pulls from a study from UC Berkeley. So Robert Emmons, who's a professor of psychology, he's at Davis, alumni.
Woo woo.
He's one of the world's leading experts on the science of gratitude. He defines gratitude as having two parts. The first is an affirmation of goodness. People can learn to wake up to the good around them and notice the gifts that they've received. And the second part of gratitude is recognizing that the source of this goodness rests outside of oneself. And that's the part that really resonates with me, which is...
What resonates with you about that?
It took a long time for me to get out of my own head and my own body. Right. I spent probably the first 20 years of my life just very focused on you just locked in this head. And when I started realizing like how many people are really out there and how many things tangentially end up affecting your life and they're just trying to do their best. And when things go right at Disneyland, it's because somebody checked the safety, somebody cleaned the floors, somebody took your ticket, somebody Once I started really processing all that, I was like, whoa, this is awesome, you know? And some people never come to that realization. Some people never have that.
You don't? Yeah.
So that's how he defines it. He defines it in two parts. There's some research published in the last decade that's shown that grateful people have fewer common health complaints such as headaches, digestion issues, respiratory infections, runny noses, dizziness, and sleep problems. And it appears that practicing gratitude could also help alleviate the pesky health problems. In one study, a group of college students who wrote about things they were grateful for once per week for 10 weeks reported fewer physical symptoms like those headaches compared to the two other control groups. So in some cases, having gratitude can actually physically help you, which seems insane. So as someone who practices gratitude and as someone who is thankful, you know, was that always the case for you? Did that start at a certain age? Like I was just talking about, what's your story there?
Well, it's so funny. Just a quick side story. I forget where I was. I think I actually might have been at Disneyland. I find Disneyland incredibly boring in general, right? Like it's okay, but it's just like, dude, like too many people.
We got to talk.
Yeah. So anyway, it's not my place. I would rather any day to be in the mountains on a river, fly fishing.
Trying to get to Disneyland. This is the goal that we're trying to get to.
Understand, but I love spending time with my children because they'll hang out, they'll just be there. And so I was just sitting there waiting for in a line or something. And I'm like, hey, let's do an exercise, guys. Let's just all put smiles on our face. Just regardless. So you have to have no reason to smile. I just want you all to smile. And I want you to see if there's an emotional affect inside of you that happens. And of course, my 14-year-old said, Dad, that's dumb. Okay. But it was interesting. So I did that for a little while and I kind of felt like an idiot. It was like, hey, I'm happy. But there is like, you can literally like feel it in your chest when you just put that smile on your face and you're like, hey, I'm happy. Like I'm grateful to be here with my kids. I'm grateful for this opportunity. Like people wait their whole life to be at Disneyland. I've been there way too much in my life because Everyone in my family loves it but me. And so I go. But whatever the situation in life is, we can have a reframe moment. And that's how I look at it, right? I went through just actually recently, the last couple of years, losing my dad, and then within 3 weeks, losing my brother, and feeling like my whole family was literally just wiped off the face of the earth in a matter of flash. That's been a really hard thing. But what I've learned is just that reframing of like, I can be grateful for the time I have now. I can be grateful for the 40 years I got with my brother. I can be grateful for the 40 years I got with my dad. Like, those are all things I can still be grateful for. And that's cool. And that's okay. I don't have to sit in a place where I'll never get to tell my brother about my day again or my dad about my week, because Sunday nights was my night where I would call them and talk to them like, hey, how you doing? What's going on? And we'd share and chat. I'll never get to do that again, but I can be grateful that 40 years I got that with them, right? Because not everyone gets that, right? And so we always get the opportunity to reframe. So reframing with gratitude changes your life in every which way. Because the reality is we can all pile on to the woe is me and things don't go our way. Like, I don't know about you, Dan, but like, I thought my life was going to go a certain way. I thought it was going to happen like this. And then I started hitting my 30s and my mid 30s and my late 30s and now into my 40s. I'm like, it didn't go like I thought it was going to go. And there was like this moment of like disbelief, this like sadness that came over me that like it didn't go how I thought it was going to go. And I've had a great life, and it still didn't go how I thought it was going to go. And for a while, I think in my late 30s, that really pulled on me hard. And then I started thinking a lot about that. And I said, well, like, it doesn't go how you want it to go. That's life. Like, we don't get to control all these variables. All we get to do is control how we respond. And that's, I think, Viktor Frankl in the book, Our Search for Happiness, I believe is the title of the book. And he talks about the last ultimate freedom, which is to choose how we respond to the world. And so my choice is to choose to respond with gratitude. Doesn't mean I'm good at it all the time. I fail all the time. But as a whole, on an average, I try to respond to the world with gratitude.
It's hard for me because I've done both. Yeah. I've lived both. And I think what the hardest thing is for me is that in order to accomplish really anything, it's a grind. I mean, no one wants you to do or achieve anything. Everything is fighting you. You're driving somewhere, it's fighting you. Like, you get there and the work is not easy. Everything, for me at least, is just this, like, it's just like that is like, it's chopping down a tree with a hatchet. It's just, right? So, and that's how I accomplish a lot of things, is that kind of really just like hard work. But that can leave you in such, if you are always that way, if you always have the mentality that it takes to achieve certain things, you can find yourself only focused on the negative parts, right? So if you have a tactical approach to things, right, and it's always like, gotta get this done, gotta get that, gotta get this done. Well, I did that, but it's not as good enough because it could be better. If you stay in that space, then you end up in this really kind of burnt out place. But my challenge, and what's hard for me, is the opposite. Is if you're just blissful and you just have like, oh, this is great, this is really great. Like, I worry that I'm not going to get anything done because I'll just be, if I'm just sort of like, hey, then it's so for me, what my challenge has been to keep that intense mentality, to be task and accomplish things, but still have those moments along the way where you stop and you look and you go, this is really cool. Right, this is really awesome, and I really did that. It could have been better, but I really did that. So that's how it's been for me. Is that you're giving me a furrow brow? So I didn't know. Were you not ready for that answer? I
wasn't ready for it. No, I'm totally ready for that answer, but I think I'm going to push back on you a little bit. And here's how I'm going to push back a little bit.
Yeah, is it? You're saying it's easy?
I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm going to say it's your choice. And you choose to make it not easy. So, okay, here, now roll with me for a sec, okay? So, 32, probably, so I'm like 43 now. I think it was 32-ish. I'm driving over on Highway 12. I've done the drive between Sonoma and Highway 12. Like, I was driving that road back when it was single lane each way. Like I've been doing this for 30 years. I don't know what it is, but I'm driving. I'm thinking one morning, I know exactly where I was. I was driving right over that bridge, and there's the Vinter who's crushing the big statue in Napa, and I was right there. And it dawned on me, this thought that, I don't know why it took me 32 years to figure this out, but it dawned on me that it's all a story, man. Every little piece of us is a story. Like we think about our ego and who our ego is. I'm going to kind of go off into the woo land and we'll come back. And the idea is that we wake up in the morning and we have all these stories about who we are and what life is and what life is not. And we project it onto this white screen, and we project it up there, and we find and play our role with our ego in that screen. And I realized that it is all a story, that I can manufacture, change, shift, adjust that story at any point. That is a choice. I might not be conscious fully of that narrative in which I spin and tell myself, but I have that choice. And I'm making that choice, as hard as it is not to make that choice sometimes, because it's really dang hard, but I'm still choosing. And that's that last ultimate freedom Viktor Frankl talks about. Like, I still have the choice to choose on how I frame this thing. And so and that's where I'm going to push back a little bit. If you're framing your world as it's a struggle, guess what the world's going to give you? A struggle.
Yeah.
Because that's what you're going to see. That's what your ego is going to, whatever you want to call it, project onto the screen. And then how your role plays within that. It's hard. It's difficult. It's a fight. I'm having to do this. And when I realized that, it was like this aha moment that broke me in a way. It broke me in a way because I knew I could no longer be a victim to my story, that I had to accept that it's just a story, man. I'm living this way because I choose.
Right.
And so like yesterday, for example, I was thinking about like, man, I'm working a lot of hours. I'm pushing hard. And, is that the story I want to tell? Is like this what I want to do with my life? Is that what I want to offer to life? And I got a chance to reframe that, think about it, and like, okay, yeah, I love what I do. I love who I'm working with. I love these things. I'm going to keep doing it. So part of gratitude for me is understanding that I have absolute control on how I frame everything in my mind. And the world delivers to me what I ask it to deliver. And it's Chris and I, my partner in the business, Chris Sipes, and I were talking about this. You have to get his take on it maybe next time he's here. But we were talking about this idea, and he's like, I think he said something to the tune to me like, when you realize that it's like you choose everything, like it's this most powerful feeling and this most disempowering feeling. And like, it's that moment that you're like, holy crap, I'm responsible for all this. And it's like, you have to be so careful what you ask for. Because if you even set that intention out into the world when you wake up in the morning, dude, world's going to bring it to you, man. It's going to bring it right back at you. And a lot of people call this the law of attraction, whatever. I don't want to get mixed up in the hooey of it. The reality is what we put out into the world comes right back the way we ask it to. And we've got to be really thoughtful, really careful about what we put out.
Well, what changed for me was when I started long distance running, because I did have up through my 20s, I had a lot of that struggle mentality. And in my 30s, I started long distance running, 4, 6, 10, 20, 30 miles.
Dan, by the way, is one of those guys like, I haven't trained in like 3 weeks, and then runs a marathon and goes, I feel fine.
Yeah.
That's Dan.
That's about all I can do. Yeah. Can't do 3 pull-ups. And what that brought for me, even a 4-mile run, is it takes all that kind of struggle mentality and it nukes it, right? And that's what this data here, UC Berkeley, Dr. Emiliana Simon says that the parasympathetic nervous system can be engaged when you start practicing gratitude. And so I think for me, when I started engaging it physically, right, it sort of showed me again how to use that nervous system, right? So then when I would be done, you'd be like, oh, okay. Now I'm able to bring it in without the running, and I still run, but I'm able to, things still happen. Things are still struggle. Things are also fine. And I'm able to find a peace and a calm and a gratitude for just about anything. There's very few things that can just fully push me off my mark, which has been a huge change for me in the last 5 years. It's taken a lot of work, but it does come from a place of, trying to really focus on what the positives are.
Yeah. Well, I think you also bring up a good point that it's a muscle like anything else, right? So my son Brighton, he's like, Dad, I want to run faster in cross country. I'm like, well, we got to start doing speed training. So I take him out the track and we do sprints and then 30-second breaks and then sprint again. And we started doing it. And by the end of the season, he was placing high. He was doing much better. And what I told him is like, you just have to teach your body how to function at that level. Just doesn't know how, but it can. And that's the David Goggins, like we're only operating at 40% of our capacity at any given time.
Right.
And that gratitude muscle is the same thing, man. Like it's just what you did is you taught your body through running that and how to go there and find the peaceful valley, as I call it. And you found that and then like, oh, I know how to get there. I'll get there when I'm not there. And I can do that because my muscle is stronger.
So let's flip forward a little bit because we have, I want to talk about how this might apply in business. So you, as a financial advisor, you work with clients and you can see gratitude both from them and yourself every single day. So do you have any stories where gratitude is intersected in your business world?
Yeah, there's lots of them. And I would think one of the most meaningful examples of the power of gratitude, and I can share his name now because he's passed on. His name was Frank. And Frank was always a very jolly man, happy. He would come and, oh, how are you? And just really sincere and just seemed to butterfly through life, right? Just flew through it, right? Or flowed through it, I guess would be the right term. And so one day Frank comes to myself and Rose, who worked with me at the time, and says, the doctor just said I've got maybe 6 months, maybe tops to live.
Rose still works with us.
She does still work with us.
Yeah.
That's right. But at the time, it was just Rose and I.
I see.
What I
Okay.
meant. And said, hey, I've maybe got 6 months to live. I've got a very aggressive brain tumor, and I'm not going to make it, guys. And it was just this like punch, like here's this dude that's super grateful, kind, like, man, how do bad things happen to good people kind of moment, And Frank lived, let me try to think. So I think he lived another 6 or 7 years after that moment. And I just watched him, and I watched how he moved through that cancer diagnosis and the chemotherapy and the treatment and how it just kept going. And here's a man who went from months to live and lived in our 6 to 7 years, somewhat through modern medical. But I don't think the most powerful factor I saw in that process is like Frank was just grateful, man. He was just light through life. Like he was just flowed through life and happy to be here and happy to see you and happy, almost kind of like golden retriever status, but that taught me a powerful lesson that like, if we can harness that energy in our life, we're going to get a lot further. And that's true with business too, right? It's like when we're in our relationships with our coworkers, in our relationships with our partners, if we can be grateful for what people offer to us, like people give more. I found that anytime I'm in a tit for tat relationship where we're nickel and diming each other, like the relationship breaks down. So what I try to do is just walk in with gratitude with all these relationships. It doesn't always work, and sometimes I'm awful at it, but I try to. And I try to say, man, I'm just really grateful for what you bring, what you offer, what you're presenting to us, and the contribution of value that you offer the organization, to employees, to clients, to partners, and that's really paid off dividends in business. And I think, frankly, gratitude is good business.
I have a story I want to share, and it's, I was trying to find an excuse to talk about football.
We knew it was coming, Dano. We knew it was coming.
So this is a story I learned from it's one of the greatest wide receivers, top 10 wide receiver in NFL history. His name's Larry Fitzgerald. He played for the Cardinals, went to one Super Bowl, and has many, many, many records. There's a great series on NFL Network called A Football Life, which is a documentary put together by NFL Films. Not going to show the clips because I don't want to get the copyright strike, but you can find it. It's not hard to find. They did a documentary on Larry Fitzgerald. Larry Fitzgerald, like I said, top 10 all time. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. He has made $182 million in just salary alone in the NFL in 16 years. Okay. $182 million man. And as I'm watching this documentary episode, they started talking about how when he's out and about, when he's anywhere, he's constantly asking people questions. He's constantly talking to people. He knows who people's kids are. He's asking, how's so-and-so doing? He's interested in them. And that made a huge impression on me because I went, here's a guy who, is worth $182 million. And he's not arrogant. He's not self-absorbed. He's not sitting there just, you don't even get to talk to me. He's out talking. He wants to know. He wants to be, he's grateful. He wants to have human connection. And there was just something about it that just really struck me in a way that said, I would like to be like that in my life. And not that I wasn't, but just, it was a reminder of, it's really, I'll tell you another story. I went one time before it was Whole Foods in Petaluma, it was called Food for Thought. It's a grocery store.
But before it was that, it was
Carl's Market.
Yeah, dude, that was my dig. And
you almost called it Carl's Jr.
I did.
And I remember I went to the meat counter one time and going to get a steak.
Yep.
And I walked up and the guy behind the counter goes, "Hey, how you doing?" And I go, "I'll get a," and I start going into my order and he goes, "Hey," I said, "How are you doing?" And it was like, idiot.
Mm-hmm.
So locked in my own head, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's another moment where it's just like, listen to what people are saying, be here and respond to people. So, you can't tell your life story every time you bump into someone at the meat counter,
right?
But you can respect them. You can ask them questions. And sometimes some of those moments, you're grateful for little connections with people and they end up playing into your career. They end up playing into business. You will, in my opinion, end up in a better place in your life financially, emotionally, physically, if you practice that kind of gratitude.
But I think you also have to do it with an honest intention, that you're not out there to get something out of people, because we all know there's people too that like, all right, what's the angle?
Right.
Because you're coming at me with an angle here.
Right.
And I think sometimes people use caring about other people as angling towards people.
It's just a front.
It's a front, right? Have you ever heard that? I don't know if it's a saying when people, I've heard that, the first 20 years of your life, you think everybody's thinking about you. The next 20 years of your life, you realize they're not thinking about you. And the third 20 years of your life, you're wishing people were thinking about you. And that kind of thought or principle, what I realized as kind of going through that, thinking that this was the world and growing up and it was all about what I see, realizing that most people don't spend time thinking about other people, they think about themselves. So you can go through this world and be genuinely curious and interested in people and what they're doing. And like this dude, it's a superpower. It's a total superpower because most people are so obsessed with what they're doing.
Yeah.
And if you learn that and generally do it from a caring, heartful place, it's a superpower by far.
I'll share one more story. So in 2018, I completely lost my voice. Not like I had laryngitis, like, oh, it's scratchy. Like it was one of those full on, like for 6 months, I could not speak right. I was unable to have speech. And so I do what I always do when I end up with a mysterious health diagnosis. I get acupuncture. So I'm a big fan of acupuncture. And so I was working in Santa Rosa at the time. Oh, by the way, I was working on the radio at the time. I was a radio personality. So losing your voice is a pretty big deal. So I was Googling and just trying to find an acupuncturist because my doctor was not giving me an answer that was, they basically just said, oh, have some tea. They couldn't really find anything functionally wrong with it. So I go to see my acupuncturist. I go to see this acupuncturist. Her name's Annette. And it was so bad that I was actually typing to her exactly what was happening and then showing her my phone. She said, I don't know if I can help, but I can try. And she really listened to me. And I went back and I went back and she really honed in on what was going on with me and really gave great care. And eventually I did get better. When I have run into other people experiencing sort of problems that I think acupuncture might help, I say, go see her. And I say, go see her because she helped me. So I say that to say I have gratitude for what she did for me, one, but two, she focused on trying to do her best for me. And look how it benefited her business. Look how many people I say, hey, go see her. She helped me, right? And that happens so often in financial services as well. So when you're leading from a place of how can I do the absolute best for this client? How can I do the absolute best for this person from the right place? It can pay dividends.
Well, so in the financial services world, there's always this thing like ask for referrals, and so the first part of my career, I was like, okay, I'm gonna ask for referrals. Here we go. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, do you think you could, like it's just this awkward thing and you make the client feel awkward and you feel awkward. And then eventually I just said, no, I'm not going to ask for referrals. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take care of the people in front of me. I'm going to do the very best I can. And I always say, you're welcome to share us, but we're not going to share you. And that's as much as I ever say to people. But it's just that idea when, like the wealthy, they say, teach their children to create value and then let money follow. And that's the same thing with Annette. She creates value and the money follows. And that's another superpower. Like when you're focused on creating value and you're grateful, and that's how you show up to commerce, money flows. It just does. Look at every person like we've talked to on this show that has that and understands that spirit. It's gratitude. It's creating value and being a good-hearted person. The money will come. It's just how it works.
So we've talked about gratitude. It's Thanksgiving season. So what is something in your life that you're grateful for?
Well, I mean, first family, like obviously that's kind of the throwaway answer, but I think family's everything. Your loved ones, however you define that. I mean, they are the world, my world. And then secondly, I'd say just the people I work with. Like we've really worked hard at this organization to bring good people into it, that have good hearts and want to care for people and take care of people. And I'd say that's generally who we have. And I'm grateful to work with those people because every day it's a joy. Like you go to work and they're like your friends. You talk to them, like it just has a good energy about it. Doesn't mean there's not bang ups and we're not figuring it out all the time, but it generally you can show up and say these are good people that have a good heart.
For me, I'll say similar to you, family and specifically health. I will always come back to that. I am grateful for, we're not without health issues, but there are certainly people who have faced far, far more challenging. And luckily, my family has not encountered that. So I'll say that. And then a fun one that don't laugh.
I won't.
I am grateful for the 49ers because, and here's why.
I knew it was coming.
But here's
I knew
why.
It was coming.
Here's why. Football twice in this episode.
Yeah.
It is something.
He wanted to make all this about football. But we had to rein him in a little bit.
It's something that my friends and I and people I don't know. It's a common language.
Yeah.
And the time and the discussions that we have around this particular topic, the topic's irrelevant. It could be Broadway. Mm-hmm. It could be Chaucer. It could be art. It could be anything. It could be the market. But it's just something that we all kind of come around. Can you believe this happened? I heard this. That actual conversation is just worth its weight in gold. I mean, it's just so, I'm so grateful to have something like that.
So you hold on to those 16 games a year. And
17 now.
17 now. Like those are moments for you, each one of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you plan out each one when you're going to do it and when you're not.
We try to dial it back a little bit because it can get a little bit too much.
Yeah.
But they're great memories and something I can have my kids involved in too.
Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you so much for checking out this episode of It's All Money. A different episode for us, but this is what the show's all about, which is finding that through line where money and where relationships and emotions and everything can eventually impact the bottom line. If you're new to the show, or if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe, and thanks for checking us out. We'll see you next time.
This content was produced by Fermata Advisors LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. DBA, Sonoma Wealth Advisors. The opinions expressed by Fermata Advisors LLC on this show are their own. All statements and opinions expressed are based upon information considered reliable, although it should not be relied upon as such. Any statements or opinions are subject to change without notice. Information presented is for educational purposes only and does not intend to make an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any specific securities, investments, or investment strategies. Investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Information expressed does not take into account your specific situation or objectives and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for any individual. Viewers and listeners are encouraged to seek advice from a qualified tax, legal, or investment advisor to determine whether any information presented may be suitable for their specific situation. Past performance is not indicative of future performance.